Next is the manager council discussion on the beach committee report. Is there a beach committee report?
Yes and no. There's not a written report because we, on the beach committee, we exceeded our annual budget for administrative of 0, meaning I didn't get it typed up yet. But the what I can report back today is that before our next meeting, I'll have something in writing summarizing the issues that the beach committee was looking at over the past couple of months and the recommendations that we're making. I can tell you that the recommendation of the committee with respect to 2 issues is on the 4x4 expansion. If you remember, there was discussion starting back in the summer and opinions expressed on both sides of whether there ought to be a physical expansion of the 4x4 area from its present terminus at Sandy Lane. And the beach committee discussed that on a number of occasions. We went down as a group over Labor Day weekend, reviewed the entire site. I had a presentation from Lieutenant Messino from the Beach Patrol and discussed alternatives. And the bottom line for the beach committee is we are recommending no expansion of the 4x4 area. The other thing had to do, well, there's about actually 8 things, but the other thing I can tell you about tonight, with respect to sale of ice cream on the beach, which is a subject you may be somewhat familiar with. We talked about a lot of alternatives that had been presented at different times about how beach, should there be ice cream sales on the beach, and if so, how should they be handled. The recommendation of the beach committee to council is going to be that next year ice cream sales be permitted on the beach, but only by authorized veterans who have the county authorization card, and without the payment of any fees other than a mercantile license fee. And details obviously to be worked out, but the committee felt it wasn't productive to go into next year trying to refine the bidding system that we had used to attempt to get third-party vendors onto the beach to sell ice cream because of the myriad problems that generated with which everyone is familiar.
Great. Thank you, Rick. And I haven't seen the recommendations in writing, but I concur with my own feeling is I agree with both of them. You know, I think we talked about the ice cream last in previous meetings, and I think it's the best just to let veterans sell it on the beach with an approved card and whatever rules we put in place for the sale, but not looking to generate the fees, putting it out to bid, and then winding up with a bidding process that none of us were comfortable with.
Are you going to limit the number of vendors?
I think that has to be worked out somehow. But
I don't believe we can because we go through the mercantile license. But, you know, with the economies of scale, people are not going to go down there and sell ice cream if there's too many other people selling ice cream. Businesses tend to regulate themselves.
Okay, at this time,
New
any other
business,
questions
Mayor,
or
I have
discussion? Sure.
New business. Mayor, I'd like to open up for discussion the golf course issue and the leasing of the golf course, specifically to the Jaworski Golf Group. I'm sure everyone's aware that we have had ongoing discussions through the Golf Course Committee, and we proceeded with an RFP. And so I thought it would be appropriate, Mayor, to open up that discussion this evening so that the public is totally aware of what has transpired, the proposal that has been put forward to City Council, and what City Council's decision will be in that regard.
Well, first, as a matter of procedure, if we were going to have a formal discussion on the golf course, we should have advertised that so that everyone who could be impacted by the golf course or potential leasing of the golf course would have an opportunity to come here and hear the discussion, participate, ask questions if they chose to.
Well, Mayor, I did request that it be put on the agenda. I'm not quite sure how it did not get on the agenda, but I see no harm in having a discussion. There are plenty of people here from the public, and I think it's overdue. I think the public needs to know where we stand financially with the golf course, what the options are.
Right. I agree that the public needs to hear the entire scenario about the golf course. They need to have access to all of the information. But if you're going to have a public meeting on the golf course, you need to advertise it. I mean, you can't put an addition on your house if you're coming here for a zoning variance without notifying your neighbors and advertising that you're going to take that action. You're going to possibly talk about the long-term 24-year lease of an entire golf course without advertising it properly and giving people an opportunity to come here and speak,
Mayor,
or to participate in the discussion.
I didn't necessarily say that we were going to take action. I said that I'd like to open up a discussion for all council members to weigh in on the options that we have, the condition of the golf course financially, and where the city's going to go from here, so that the public can be aware of, what direction we're taking.
Does any council member have all of the information in front of them about the golf course right now? And are they prepared to enter into that discussion, including the financials, not knowing that it was going to be discussed?
Well, I can comment on that. Phil, I think you're maybe misreading Councilman Palella's intention here. We're just at a point, and we all know this, without talking about the particulars of the proposal that was made, we're at the point now where kind of the ball's in our court. If we are going to move forward to the point where there is something for council to act on, yes or no, on the Jaworski proposal, we need to tell our professionals, do the necessary things to put together an actual contract. Because as we all know, there is a proposal. We asked Jaworski to come back with their best offer. They did that. And so it's now on us. Right now, the thing is stagnant. If we want to get it to the point where there can be a meaningful discussion both by us and by the public, and by the way, there's going to be a public discussion in a hearing, and I would suggest we do schedule a specific one once we have a form of contract and the details of what it is we're being asked to approve are in writing. And then, of course, when that contract gets before council for an up or down vote, you have another public session then. But right now, the only alternative that's been fully fleshed out, and I'm saying that from the perspective of the seven of us, because we've had these discussions, is the Jaworski proposal. And whatever opinions people may have about that, in order to get that to a point where we vote on it and can discuss it and publicly discuss it and tell people this from A to Z is what is being proposed, is to have our attorney and our manager and whoever else is involved in that process talk to Jaworski's people and hammer out an actual form of contract that they bring back to us and that we discuss in whatever fashion we think is appropriate, at one meeting, at two meetings, at 10 meetings.
Well, I have to disagree. I think we are getting way ahead of where we should be before the public participates. The fundamental question is whether the public, everyone in the city of Brigantine has an ownership stake in the golf course, whether they want to enter into a long-term lease. That's the first question. The second question is, financially, does it make any sense? And the third question is the form of the contract. So you want us to sit here tonight and tell our professionals what we want to see in a contract, have them do that work, and then come back to this meeting and let the public respond to it, which I think is wrong. You know, we've been in executive session. In fact, there's been a third offer that was just offered this week that we haven't even talked about ourselves yet. I don't know if it's any different than the other two, but at least we've been working through a process, and for us to try and rush this through at the last moment,
Wait, this is
Makes
not, this is
absolutely no
not,
sense.
this is far from being rushed through. I
Fred, are
mean,
we
come
at
on,
the-
and we've had,
are we
we've
at
had
the
countless
time
discussions on,
that-
on this. Excuse me.
We're still in
excuse
negotiations.
me, we're not in
I
the public
think-
Are
portion
we
right
still
now?
in negotiations with Mr. Jaworski? Is this the proper time to bring this up?
Well, let me start.
Excuse me, we're not in the public portion at this time.
Is the city in negotiations with the Jaworski organization? My understanding is yes.
So did we
There-
bring that out to the public yet, or do we still go back in executive session and work it out and then bring it to the public?
Historically, on this issue, you have done it in executive session. The fact that there is a recent amendment to the Jaworski proposal, I would assume council would want to discuss that in executive session. Now, having said that, I suppose I have to go to the next step. The utilization of executive session is not mandatory. It is an opportunity that is provided to the governing body through the appropriate statutes, that you can go into executive session for a limited number of circumstances, and among those circumstances are contract negotiation. But it is not mandatory that you do that. If you wish to discuss something in public, you can discuss it in public. And if you are going to do that, I trust that council appreciates the shortfalls in that approach to the extent that any negotiation strategy that you have, which normally is kept within the confines of council, so that as your staff goes and negotiates with the other party, that there still is a level of negotiation strategy that we are controlling. If you want to do it in public, I do not know of anything that would prohibit you. But this matter, in our involvement, has been an executive session matter to this point, and we do have an amendment to the Jaworski proposal that I don't know that council's had the opportunity to discuss.
But we, as a matter of procedure, we have
Been an executive session matter to this point, and we do have an amendment to the Jaworski proposal that I don't know that council's had the opportunity to discuss.
But we, as a matter of procedure, we have an agenda that's published, that is put on the website. We have procedure. We have an agenda that's published, that is put on the website. We have manager and council discussion. We have a beach committee report that makes it to the discussion phase. But something as important as the golf course isn't even listed on the agenda? You're sending out the perception that you're trying to push something through without the public having full involvement in the process.
I'd just like to say something. Councilman Puella did ask me to put it on the agenda. I put it on the agenda as an executive session item because I thought that's where it should go. I don't believe he was trying to be deceitful, but that's my fault, for not putting it on as a resolution. I thought the executive session, because that's where we've been speaking about it. It was a new proposal.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
sorry for
It-
that.
it's
That
the-
wasn't
it's the
intentional on my
best-
part.
It's the best and final, Fred. We've gone through 3 different sessions now. I don't believe that we are going to, in any way, shape, or form, hurt our negotiations. We have a best and final offer.
let me be very clear about
Let me
this.
just finish my...
We had
No,
passed the
I wanna
final
be-
last time, and then all of a sudden we got another one.
I want to be very clear about this. I want to have a very lengthy, comprehensive, public discussion of the Jaworski offer. I want to do that. And I think everybody on council wants to do that. But you don't do it if you don't advertise it. And you have to give people the opportunity to hear it, to respond to it, and to be involved in the process. If that is the intent of what you're trying to do tonight, you don't do it this way. And I have to tell you, I am completely in favor of having this discussion in public. I think people need to know what has been offered, what that means long-term to everyone financially. And certainly have no problem with that. I have no problem with us releasing the executive session minutes once the matter has been resolved. But it needs to be done in public, and it has to be done properly. It has to be advertised. In fact, you've already not given people one opportunity to discuss it already because it wasn't on the agenda. So the first public participation part of the meeting, no one had a chance to even say anything about it. So here we are in the discussion phase. We're going to have the discussion. Quite frankly, I'm not prepared. I didn't bring any of the financial information I have. I have a file that's probably 6 inches thick after all the time that we've gone through all this and the ramifications of what it means. I didn't know to bring it, and I think it's unfair to council members and to the public.
Jennifer, this is going to be discussed tonight in executive session? Is it on the
That's why
agenda?
Yeah, that's why I placed it on the agenda. I sent you all an email
Well, what it
last
says
week.
is contract negotiations.
No, but the email, I did send you all an email on, I believe it was on Friday, that listed this as an executive session item with the other executive session items. I didn't put it on the public agenda, I put it on executive
It
session.
came in the body of an email.
And I...
Right,
I
and
recall
I sent
seeing
you
that,
over
yeah.
the new proposal by Ron Jaworski earlier than that, and I referenced that in the email. So, it's a one-page
Yeah.
explanation of their new.
And Mayor, I requested it to be on the agenda. Matter of fact, when I received the agenda, I believe it was on Friday, I immediately called Jennifer. I said, I noticed that it's not on the agenda. She said she was going to take care of it. And I stopped in on Monday to see Jennifer, and she was out. So clearly, my
I did
intent was to place it on the agenda so that the public had an opportunity to know that we were going to discuss it.
That
Well,
is true, and I did send an email shortly, about 15 minutes after you
Doesn't matter.
spoke.
It's not on the agenda. That's
So can we...
No, as executive session item,
Right,
but our
right.
executive session items, we don't detail on the formal agenda.
You're absolutely right.
We have one more meeting this year. Can we direct the city manager to put the golf course on that agenda for discussion?
Which
And-
is on December 29th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's correct. Or we could have another meeting.
Well,
We have the meeting 2 p.m. on December 29th.
Correct. So can we direct that this be advertised and placed on the agenda for that meeting?
And how many people are available at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Typically, excuse me. Yeah, apparently, I guess some people knew that the golf course issue might come up tonight. But the issue that we deal with usually at that 2 o'clock meeting at the end of the year is just closing out accounts at the end of the year. It is purely a business meeting. It is not one that we use to take action. And once again, I want to be very clear. We need to have a full public discussion of the offer that has been made by the one respondent to the RFP process.
When would you like to have that meeting?
We could have that.
may I interject? This thing is going off the tracks here. What is before us tonight is simply, and we're not discussing the terms of the Jaworski proposal. No one is doing that. We all get that we're in negotiations with them, and that's not going to be discussed here. But we also get, or at least I hope we get, that for us to engage the public in the way that you want, Phil, and the way that we all want, and the way that I've said now for 2 years we're going to do, we have to have something that is public and publishable. that's in front of us for action. The only thing that can be is a proposed form of contract. Now, if to get there, and again, without us presuming what we'll do with it once it gets in front of us, you can't have a public discussion unless there is a document that we can publish to the people and say, this is what we're being asked to vote on. Until you get to that point, until the terms are memorialized in that way of the proposed deal, we can't engage the public, whether it's tonight or on the 29th or any other day. So what I am suggesting, and what I think Tony was suggesting, is simply, and I think his reasoning in bringing it up was simply to let the public know that we are still working on it. We're moving forward. We're looking at all the options. There are other things being talked about that we're not talking about tonight, but we all know there's this offer out there, and that we've been trying to refine it. I think, maybe council as a body thinks, that we're at the point where they've made their best offer. We can talk tonight in executive session about that. All I'm saying is, to get from that point to the point where you can actually then say to the public, we have a proposal, here are the terms of the proposal, then have the council members discuss the pros and the cons as they see it, and maybe the alternatives that are out there as they see them and they understand them. And then, whether it happens that night or the next night or some other night, you vote it up or down. Right now, we're talking in the abstract about things we do agree on. We all agree the public needs to be involved. And if it takes a 10-hour session, fine. If it takes 2 10-hour sessions, that's fine. But we can't do that until we push this to the point where there is something that is in front of council that we can act on. The alternative, which is where we are now, is we're just at stasis. We're not moving on this. You want to bring it to a head for a resolution, the only way to do that is to have our people talk to their people based on whatever it is we talk about tonight in executive session, and have them put together a form of contract that we can vote yes or no on. Then,
Rick?
once that exists, you can have as many public sessions as you want before you vote on it.
Maybe I misunderstood what Mr. Pallola was attempting to do tonight. I assume that you were attempting to talk about all of the terms of the proposal that were offered by Mr. Jaworski at this time. And it sounded to me, and maybe I misunderstood, but probably others heard the same, that we were going to then direct our professionals to develop a contract based on the terms that we told them, our professionals, right here. But what I'm hearing now is that we're going to go back into executive session at the end of this meeting, give our professional team some direction if in fact that offer is agreeable to the members of this council, and then it would become public at a subsequent meeting where we would have essentially a public hearing on this issue before anything is finalized.
Well, let me modify that a little bit. I'm perfectly comfortable right now with saying informally, because I don't think it requires a formal vote, to our professionals, we all know what the offer was, put that into a contract form, bring that document back to council for a vote. And, that's a matter of formality of procedure. And as far as what we talk about tonight in executive session, the fact that we may then direct our professionals, and again, I don't think that requires any resolution. We do it all the time. We direct our professionals all the time, particularly Fred, to negotiate with people, to settle lawsuits, and to resolve matters. So, whatever if we direct them to do that, that doesn't connote agreement to any terms. It simply means this is the mechanism, because it is, to get that proposal into a form where council can vote on it.
Is that the intent of what you wanted to do?
Well, I'm
Mr.
fine,
Pallola?
I'm fine with that direction, Mayor.
Okay, so at the end of this meeting, we'll go into executive session to discuss the latest offer, and at that point, give some direction, once we come out of executive session, to our professionals to move forward, if in fact council is of a consensus to do that, to move forward with the development of some terms. I don't think you're going to get to a complete contract document, but I may be wrong. I'm not an attorney. But I think we once again, need to have a advertisement of what we're going to discuss, let people come here and hear their opinions exactly on the offer that has been proposed.
We're going to go into executive session, tell our attorney to write up a contract between us, the city, and Jaworski. Well, listen to the public. Any one of these people might come up with a great idea, and we just waste all our money. Why can't we do a public session, listen to the people, then go into the executive session whenever we advertise for that, and then direct Mr. Cerny or whoever that attorney might be at that particular
But
time?
if we do that, the discussion won't have any focus. It'll be all over the lot. If we have something hard and fast for people to look at and to see and to come and discuss, if it's just a question, the golf course to lease it or not to lease it or to come up with some other alternatives,
But you wanna
it's
write
not
up
going to be a
contract.
focused
Why
discussion.
are we writing up a contract before we're putting the cart before the horse? Let's
We have a
Maybe
different,
have a
we,
public
we,
session
isn't
on
it,
what we found. You know, we advertised it, all these people will come back, we'll talk about it, they might come up with a great idea, somebody might come walking through the door, and we tweak it at that particular time, then we tell Mr. Cerny, or whoever that attorney may be at that time, to move ahead.
Andy, I got to disagree with you. It's not the cart before the horse. In fact, you've got it backwards.
No,
We
you got
can't-
it backward.
No,
I know what
Andy.
you're trying to do, Rick, so, I mean,
Well, then,
I
I
was born
applaud
at
you
night,
for
but it
reading
wasn't
my
last
mind.
night.
Andy,
Yeah,
it is this simple.
I'm listening.
We have a proposal out there
I've
that
been
we
doing-
can't publicly discuss.
Mhm.
We have had input from the public over 2 years. People at the very beginning of the process and through there said, I think you should have a term of so many years, or not to exceed this many years, what they thought should be the right financial terms. We've gotten a lot of input. We attempted, and you know this, to get in our RFPs the best we could get. We got what we got,
Right?
good or bad, and now we've taken the one offer. There's been back and forth on that. I think, the impression I have, is that that's now at an end point. The deal terms, as proposed, aren't going to change from that bidder's perspective. In order for us to have the public discussion that everybody wants to have, we can't in the abstract say tonight, okay, we're going to talk about, I want to get your ideas for what ought to be in the contract, and somebody gets up and says, well, I think it should be, 5 years and $1 million a year. Okay, but that's done, and I can't tell anybody, and we can't tell anybody, the real offer that we've gotten that we have to decide on is different. I mean, the deal terms are done. That's been a 2-year process. The other terms in a contract, Fred will tell you this, I won't say they're boilerplate, because it's not that, but these aren't matters that all, in most cases, are that significant or that big a deal breaker. You might argue about an indemnity clause, or how much insurance somebody has to carry, and things like that. But, that's typically the lawyers talking to the lawyers. They work out the best thing. Fred would bring back to us and say, the deal points are incorporated here, here, and here. The other provisions were negotiated. This is what their side, if you agree to it, this is what their side would sign, and if you agree to it, obviously you would sign it. Then we can tell the public, this is what has been proposed. And if the public says, if to a man they all say, I hate this indemnification clause, don't sign it, then maybe we don't sign it for that reason. And no doubt they will have a lot of input as well on the deal points. But we simply cannot have that discussion with the public until that thing exists.
I guess the other question to our attorney is, by drawing up a contract based on the offer that has been received, is there the implied acceptance of the terms that have been offered?
No.
Okay.
I mean, just if I want me to elaborate on that, historically, when we are representing municipalities, which we do a lot of, and we're in deals with either whatever you call them, developers, redevelopers, the operators of major consulting marketing firms or management firms, it is not unusual for the governing body to basically say, that's the firm we want to deal with, and then point to the professional staff to go out and put together the deal. But the deal is not the deal until it is brought back to the governing body, and the governing body has the ability to analyze, discuss, participate with the public, and then the governing body approves that deal. Most of these larger corporations that do this kind of work with municipalities understand that it truly isn't over until it's over, and the fact that you're sitting in a room negotiating terms only means that those terms will be taken back to the governing body where the authority actually resides to enter into the agreement itself. So to point to me, Jennifer,
Right.
and say, go have a conversation, that means go and begin to try to move this thing forward. It is not binding, and it does not mean that you, as a matter of fact, have an effective agreement in place.
Okay.
Does it imply that the majority of council wanted you to go in this direction?
Well, if a majority of council makes the statement, go out and enter into an active negotiation, then that's what the majority has said, yes.
And that would be done in executive session, or it would be done in public?
Generally speaking, the background work for these things is done in executive session. You can come back into public and basically have a motion that directs the senior staff to go and do it. Is that motion in public absolutely necessary? No, but as a matter of form, there is value to it.
So after the executive meeting tonight, it is possible that such a motion would be made and voted upon?
Again, the motion being to
ask our professionals to enter.
initiate a discussion, initiate a negotiation. There was, I don't know of anything that would prohibit that.
Okay. Once again, I think it's very important to have a full public discussion of what has been offered on the golf course. I will go on record as saying that if, in fact, we ask our professionals to negotiate or to come to some final proposal from the one respondent, that does not imply that it is a completed deal from the city of Brigantine. Because I think we, once again, have the responsibility to hear from the public on this issue.
I think we're all in agreement with that, Mayor.
Right. We would agree that it does not indicate a completed deal, but indicates the fact that the majority of council wants to move in that direction.
Well, I think you have to be careful, once again, saying you want to move in that direction because the public is
negotiate.
not to negotiate.
No, but it puts
No,
us in
to-
puts us in a situation where we'll have some information, a packet of something, even if it's that one page, to
Well, no, we-
release to the public so
Right.
that people can see some broad
Well,
brushstrokes, and then we can fill in the details later. But you need a place for people to start the discussion, a takeoff point. Otherwise, it's going to be completely unfocused, and a lot of time and a lot of emotion and energy is going to be wasted, I think.
And we have a one-page proposal right now.
But that's not what was proposed by Councilman DeLugri. We're given direction to Fred to prepare a document that will then come back to City Council, and when we have that document, we will have a public discussion.
Right. And I once again, will voice my opposition to having a public meeting on something as important as the golf course at 2 o'clock on December 29th. I think that is a complete disservice to the residents of Brigantine. And once again, it creates the perception that things are not being done in the light of day, although that would be the light of day. But it would not certainly be an open process that the public could participate in.
Right. Well, again, so we're clear, no one is saying we're going to do this on the 29th, and in fact,
Well, I think Dr. Kern said that exactly.
suggested,
when-
but
Yeah.
again, given that there has to be that document, that contract document, for us to have a discussion to begin with, I think Fred would tell you, and I would tell you if I was sitting in his chair, that's not going to be done by the 29th.
Ann H. Phillips, 308 27th Street. I have a statement from the Taxpayers Association, and it's about the golf course. And that is a subject which has concerned us for some time. This whole business is not a rush to judgment, which I think some people think it is. It is not. It's been a concern for some time. This council, representing all the taxpayers and in the best interests of the whole municipality, has a choice to make about the future of the course and the economy of this island. They are connected. Based on a cost-benefit analysis for the taxpayers and the urgent need to revitalize the island's weak economy and increase the island's attractions, there is only one choice, and that is a lease, which evidently would be with Mr. Jaworski, Ron Jaworski Golf, since he's the one responding to the RFP. The golf course needs professional, experienced help. It needs a lot of money for necessary property upgrades and for expanded, innovative, and competitive marketing activities and services. With the lease, this money comes from the lessee. It would not come from the taxpayers, paying debt service on borrowed money, and would keep the council's commitment it made at purchase for a self-sustaining golf course. There is no valid comparison between the two choices. Ron Jaworski Golf has the resources, competence, a record of success, high standards of business and financial practices, and is a multi-course company with all the advantages that brings. The other choice offers a status quo, a lower level of management at a still playable but non-competitive course with a continuing declining revenue subsidized in 2014 by the taxpayers for the small minority of the people who actually play there. And that subsidy is evidently going to continue for 2015. The game of golf status in general is down, which makes the need for a successful golf company and as a lessee even stronger. This council would would do a great and long-lasting disservice to the taxpayers and to the island's future by putting local control above sound government and a wise business decision. Is that the legacy you want? Throwing away the opportunity to place the city-owned asset in the hands of a reputable company which would invest its own money, knows how to make a successful business, and realize the course's potential to give our economy a valuable and much-needed boost. The question is this the legacy you want? And, just to make sure that we all understand the dates of the next meeting and what's going to take place at that meeting, and when is this public discussion going to take place? Is it at the next meeting, and is that date the 29th of December?
It's not as far as I'm concerned. That meeting is a meeting that is scheduled to tie up loose ends for the end of the year. It probably will be at one of the first meeting in January, which I believe is January 7th.
Excuse me.
That would seem to make, I don't know if
That's up to Fred.
if Mr. Cerny will have things wrapped up by then, or it could be the second meeting in January. But Mrs. Phillips, I would ask that you hold your judgment
Right.
on this issue until you see the financial impact. I'm not sure how you're able to draw a conclusion if you haven't seen the numbers.
We have seen the numbers. We saw the numbers in the report that was submitted by the auditor on
No, I mean the numbers from the Jaworski
yes,
deal.
but
I think, once again, and I don't want to get into a debate or an argument with you here because it wouldn't be fair to you because you haven't seen the numbers, and it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the public because they haven't seen them either.
Yes, but I have a picture of I think, a good picture of what is involved here. We know what the status quo is. We know what this company has done, what it does now, and what it could do for us. We have a choice. Either the company puts the money in because it wishes to have a successful golf course, or we and the taxpayers put it in. I don't want the taxpayers to put it in. It's better if you have a thriving company because it's going to affect not just the golf course, but the rest of the economy on this island.
But
It
once
is
again,
some-
I would tell you to reserve your judgment until after you see the numbers that are in the proposal.
I think you have to look at a clear picture right now, and that picture is
It's not
not.
clear though, without the number. You can't make a
Yes,
decision
I'm-
without the
excuse me. I think you can, and I think the
Well,
council
you
does have
must
to
be
do
told.
this.
Mrs. Phillips, I have to agree with the mayor. I think that you should reserve your opinion until, everyone should reserve their opinion until they see the pros and cons. I tend to agree that the city shouldn't operate it and we should go in a different direction. However, the decision is going to be made by a different council, and, you know, it's going to be brought out to the public. You're going to see the pros and the cons. I have my personal feelings on the way that it should go. I also believe that we need to stop taxing the taxpayers in terms of subsidizing the golf course. And I agree with you. I don't think that the town should go in any deeper debt. But until you've had an opportunity to hear what's been proposed and the reasons why it may be in the best interest of the city to go that route or a different route, I think you just have to reserve your judgment until that time.
Well, I think the judge, I think the picture is quite clear, and the choices are rather stark, except for the fact that we did get one response, which I think does offer us an opportunity. And you have to look, I think, the whole picture here. What are your choices?
And that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. Wait until you see the numbers, look at the whole picture, and then, speaking for the Taxpayers Association, I think you can make an informed decision. Right now, I don't know how you make a decision not having the numbers in front of you and looking at the proposal, what that means for the term and a lot of other issues going forward. You don't have that, Mrs. Phillips, so I would tell you respectfully that I disagree. I think you should wait until you get that information.
Okay, but the final point is, again, you have two choices, basically. You do stick with the status quo, and I think we have seen that the status quo is not working, or you look to somebody who is a success in this business of running a golf course and brings many advantages to taking on Brigantine. And I think you can look at, perhaps argue about certain figures and negotiate and so on, but the big picture remains. You have two choices, and I think there is only one that offers an opportunity for you to go in a better direction that's going to help the island in addition to saving a golf course. And believe me, the economy is fairly weak in Brigantine in terms of business that are prospering, business that might be closing, and a golf course that is thriving, has connections to others, and is well known would be a big benefit to the whole community. So you say, look at the numbers, fine, that's what you have to do. But I think you also have to have an idea that there are two clear directions. And from what I can see as a taxpayer, I don't want to subsidize the golf course. So what is your other choice? Because if you don't put money into it, it's going to have to come from either an outside company or the taxpayers, and that's not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Phillips. Yes, Robert? Could we, once again, just to kind of refocus, we are at a council meeting, so if we could keep the, this is not the British Parliament. We can keep the comments down, please. Robert?
Robert Palillo, 2 Gerard Place. Actually, my question was going to be where we were with the status of the RFP and the BAFO. What I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, I mean, we all know the RFP went out and responses came in, and then there was a request for a BAFO, best and final offer, which means just that, best and final offer. That has been received?
Twice,
You received 2 best and final offers.
yes.
From the same person.
From the same person.
Okay, so that's different. So it was,
We might get another
all
one,
right.
right?
Well, my point is here, you want to talk about tie up loose ends. I mean, there's a lot of loose ends that should have been tied up by now, like the contracts for the fire, the police, and this golf course. My recommendation would be to go back there, executive session, and review what should be a BAFO, best and final offer. Okay? If you don't agree to that best and final offer, you vote on that. It's that simple. And then it goes, like Mr. Livesey said, goes out for another RFP or whatever you want to do, or you have a public discussion with suggestions. But I would love to see, and I would be happy to take off work and come back on the 29th at 2 o'clock, but I'd like to know, like you say, what am I looking at? So I would like everyone to go back there tonight, look at the BAFO, and publish it. It's done. Negotiations should be done at this point. Publish it. Let the public know what we're looking at. Then we come back here on the 29th. I'll come the 27th. But do a special meeting. I don't care. But come back so we know what we're looking at, and you hear the public's comment on that BAFO. And if they don't want it, they don't want it. It's that simple. What's the confusion?
Well, Rob, as you know, we're going to tell, more likely, Mr. Cerny over there to go ahead and start negotiations with Mr. Jaworski. And when that...
Negotiation should be done. If it's a BAFO,
Well,
negotiation should be done.
It's a piece of paper. That's not negotiation. There's one line on a piece of paper. That's what... So he has to
Oh, the
get
BAFO.
into it more detailed, and once he gets to that point...
I mean, it's
then
been
he can
going on
bring
a
it
long
back.
time. I mean, we do,
Well,
tens
we
of
gotta-
millions of dollars in federal contracts, at the tech center, and I've never seen, those go this long. Crazy.
Well, there's a little difference between federal contract at the tech center and the public
Well, I would hope, yeah.
owned golf course here in Brigantine going out for an RFP and then having an offer and looking at the potential of a 24-year lease.
I agree with you. I hope not.
So we need to make sure that the public, first of all, is aware of whatever terms will be part of this. There are a lot of things that are up in the air in the proposal that's been provided. And also, we need to have a public meeting, and we don't need to have a public meeting at a time when most people can't get here to talk about something
I
as
think 2
important as
o'clock's
that.
going to be good because you're going to have a lot of people who are going to want to discuss it. So you're going to need a lot of time. 2 o'clock's great, if you ask me. But still, again, I want to know ahead of time. I don't want to know at 2 o'clock here. Here's what it is. Let's discuss it. I would love for this to be published in the paper. Here is what we're looking at. Are we looking at a 24-year lease? I hope not. Are we looking at a 10-year lease? I'll think about it. And as far as the numbers, like Ms. Phillips said, we know what the numbers are status quo. Okay? We talked about, I heard a not-for-profit. How about a not-for-loss? I don't care what the profit is because we're not going to see any substantial profit. So a risk analysis on profit potential, Andy, if there was a great profit, I know you'd be buying it or leasing it. Okay, so we got to look at a risk analysis on profit potential. There is no great profit potential that should put the taxpayers at a risk. So instead of not-for-profit, how about not-for-loss?
Robert, let me say 2 things if I could.
Sure.
Robert, in
Go ahead.
response to, thanks, Andy.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
If there's profit, you'd be on it.
Okay,
wouldn't you?
Richard.
All right, Robert, I appreciate the sentiment. I understand where you're coming from with the desire to see the best and final offer published, but for the reasons we talked about, we can't do that. Until the negotiations are done, and the negotiations include the preparation of a draft form of contract and both sides in concept, signing off that. If that form of contract is approved by council, then it will be a binding contract on both sides. Until we get to that point, we can't give the public the deal memo or the deal terms or anything like that. And the second point is, that's very impressive Sons of Anarchy Jimmy Smits thing you got going on there.
Barbara Dragon, 600 West Brigantine Avenue. Address change. I personally would like to thank Councilman Palillo and Councilman Kern for their dedication in the last 4 years and 6 years. They've worked extremely hard to try to put Brigantine on the right foot, and I think they have succeeded, and I hope that this will continue in the future. And thank you again, both of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dragon. Any other public comment? We have, Conrad's behind you, though, and he hasn't spoken yet.
Conrad Weiler, 104 2nd Street South. Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what Barbara Dragon said. I think Dr. Kern and Mr. Palillo brought a lot of new ideas to council and got a lot of people involved that weren't involved before. And I personally am very indebted to them for their contributions and their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad.
So,
Now,
this is
are you not coming on the 29th?
I'm coming.
Okay.
But if I may, I'd like to make a statement.
Sure. I may find, I think we have one more public comment. Chuck?
There was something in the Atlantic City press today about the towns around Atlantic City are going to have to subsidize Atlantic City's taxes. Is the council aware of that? I didn't
Yes.
quite understand the article.
I think there, and Chuck, that's a good question. There was a little bit of confusion because the numbers that were given were on the average assessment. So I think that that may have confused people looking at the graphics that the press had done. But there is another proposal that has been put forth. I have not had time to look at it, and obviously that'll have to be looked at. But right now, as it stands, depending on which option actually if that option is implemented, whether it's a pilot or a reduction in some, there are two impacts that you can see. And if your assessment is higher than the average assessment, your impacts will be greater than what was shown in the press graphic. So it's early in the process right now. I think we need to get more information, which we don't have, but obviously all of us are concerned going forward. The flip side of that is we're equally concerned because we need to keep the casino industry viable, and we have a lot of Brigantine families that depend on income from the casino industry. If in fact Taj Mahal does, we don't know where that stands right now, if in fact it does close, that will add to the over 200 plus families that are already impacted by the closings that have occurred so far. So it is something that all of us I know are concerned about, and we'll continue to watch. And I'm sure that as these proposals go forward, there will be, if it's good for the communities in general, I think there would be support for some type of proposal like that. If it's going to be extremely detrimental, I know that there will be organizations that will be watching it, and the one I can think of in particular is the one that I go to is the Atlantic County Mayors Association. The other would be, I'm sure the League of Municipalities would take a look at it as well, because right now it's too soon to tell, but as you mentioned, there is a tax impact to both of those plans. One not that great, the other is much more significant depending, and both of them will vary depending on the value of your property. Yeah, Longport is, yes. Well, Avalon won't be impacted because they're in Cape May County. It'll just be Atlantic County. Brigantine is, we're probably the third or fourth most impacted. Third, with Margate being second, probably us third. So it's, obviously we're concerned. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, seeing none. Dr. Kern, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is my last regular Wednesday night council meeting as a sitting councilman. It has been an honor and a privilege to sit on council. I want to thank all of the people who supported me worked hard for me and with me. I especially want to thank my wife, my children, and my grandchildren for allowing me the time to serve my community. I was driving with a friend last week who asked me what I thought was the most important accomplishment of my term in office. And without hesitation, I said, transparency. When I first began to come to council 8 or 9 years ago, meetings frequently took 35 to 45 minutes from start to finish. There was frequently no discussion about any item on the agenda. Resolutions were frequently passed without discussion by a vote of 7-0. I used to think how unusual it was that an ordinance or resolution was announced and then voted on without any debate with respect to its usefulness, its cost, or its impact on the community. I was not used to such slam dunk processes. To be sure, there was time for comments from the audience. In those days, the audience was typically less than 10 people. There was no encouragement to speak or to be heard. To go to the microphone and speak to City Council was somewhat daunting. It seemed to me that new voices were not welcomed, dissent was not encouraged, and homeowners felt left out of the system of government in their city. Now that there is diversity amongst council, there is open discussion and debate. This produces significant transparency. You have learned much about the operations and financial conditions of the city simply being at and hearing council meeting discussions. But probably the single most important thing that I helped to accomplish was our insistence that all professional service contracts, especially in engineering, be put out to fair, competitive bid. This alone has saved the city thousands of dollars. Remember, money spent unwisely affects all of our real estate property taxes. During the past 2 years, council has worked hard to lower starting salaries in police and fire departments, together with longer steps towards the process of retirement. It is now your responsibility as informed citizens to make sure that council keeps their election promises regarding new police and fire contracts and continues our commitment to recognizing divergent viewpoints as being authentic. We now have a functioning website, a well-functioning website. Our budgets are on the website. Citizens are given the opportunity to discuss the budget before introduction. Council agendas, together with supporting documents, are posted in advance of meetings. Citizens are given the opportunity to speak on our agenda items before we vote. And finally, we have some Saturday meetings to accommodate residents who cannot make the regular Wednesday evening meetings. These are just some of the benefits resulting by having a council made up of people with different viewpoints. This is not only good for council, but it also allows citizens with differing views to speak up. Secretive government is bad government. We have an obligation to uphold the best tenets of our democracy, a free and open government. I am proud of what I have accomplished in opening the operations and decisions of city government to our citizens. I wish the best of luck to Mr. Serra and in his new position, and wish all Brigantine residents, employees, and visitors a happy and healthy new year.
Mayor,
Thank you,
if
Frank.
you don't mind, I'd like to make a
Yes.
statement as well. Frank, that was a very comprehensive analysis of what has happened since we've had a two-party system, and couldn't have said it better myself, so I'm not going to repeat most of the things that you said. First, I would like to say that it has been an honor and a privilege to represent all the residents of our community. Since being elected in 2009, and with the addition of my fellow Democratic colleagues, we have changed the philosophy on how we govern. Some say for the better, some say for the worse. I can tell you that all council members work hard and strive to make Brigantine a better, safer, and more affordable community. We have started the process of taking appropriate steps to reduce our ever-increasing budget. We have reduced staff through attrition, started the conversation of reducing starting salaries, and include longer step increases and the elimination of longevity pay. Most members of this council understand that we must do everything in our power to do what is in the best interest of all the residents of Brigantine. This is not an easy task. I'm sure that everyone on this dais would agree with that comment. So while we have taken steps in managing and reducing our budget, much more needs to be done. I want to wish my fellow colleagues on council and newly elected member Vince Serra the best of luck in the continuing efforts this council has started. Many of our residents face tremendous struggles in these difficult economic times, and they need our support and our help. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year to everyone, and have a happy, healthy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. At this point, we need a motion to retire to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, if you would, Lynn, would you read the motion to retire to executive session?
What's it?
Oh, for contract negotiations, is there an update on litigation? And litigation as well.
Whereas the Open Publics Meeting Act permits the exclusion of the public from meetings in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the governing body wishes to discuss contract negotiations and litigation, minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires that confidentiality, then the minutes can be made public. Now therefore be it resolved that the public be excluded from this meeting. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you, Lynn. We don't anticipate taking any action unless there's going to be action on litigation that I'm not aware of. Okay.
There may be action, I think, in directing our attorney and city manager to go forward in negotiations.
I think it was implied in the conversation
Yes.
we just had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think that we need a resolution for that. You can,
But there may be.
yeah, it could just be direct.
Right. Just sticking with the theme of transparency.
Yeah. Go ahead, Fred. Do the conference.